So in the summary of the locomotion and movements, the movement is an essential feature of all living beings, right? Protoplasmic streaming, then ciliary movements, then movements of fins, limbs and wings. Okay, movements of fins, limbs and wings, etc. are some forms exhibited. These are the some forms. These are the some forms that exhibited. Okay, so these are the some forms that exhibited. What exhibited? Okay, that exhibited by the animals. Okay, a voluntary movement which causes the animal to change its place is called locomotion. It is a voluntary movement, that is, it's our in control. Okay, now to change its place is called the locomotion. Now animals move generally in search of food, shelter and mate, breeding ground, better climate to or to protect themselves, right? So this is why they need the movement. Now the cells of the body exhibit amoeboid ciliary muscular movement. Now the cells of the human body exhibit amoeboid ciliary and muscular movements. Locomotion and many other movements require coordinated muscular activities. So locomotions and many other movements require coordinated muscular activities, right? Three types of muscles are present in our body. That is, skeletal muscles are attached to the skeletal elements. They appear striated and are voluntary in nature. Now visceral muscles present in the inner walls of visceral organs are non-striated and involuntary. That is, it's not, the movement is not in our control, right? Now cardiac muscles are the muscles of the heart. They are striated, branched and involuntary. Remember, they are branched. They are branched. Cardiac muscles are branched and involuntary. Now muscle possess excitability, contractility, extensibility and elasticity. Okay, now muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle. So muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle, right? Just like a cell is the unit of life, right? You can compare that, like muscle is the anatomical unit of muscle. Muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle. Now each muscle fiber has many parallelly arranged myofibrils. So each muscle fiber has many parallelly arranged myofibrils. Now each myofibril contains many serially arranged units called sarcomere, which are the functional units. So each myofibril contains many serially arranged units. Okay, which are functional units, right? Each sarcomere has a central A band made up of thick myosin filaments, and two half I bands are made up of thin actin filaments on either side of it, marked by Z lines. So each sarcomere has a central A band made up of thick myosin filament and two half I bands made up of thin actin filaments. On either side of it is marked by Z line. Okay. The active sites for myosin on resting actin filaments are masked by a protein that is troponin. The active sites for myosin on resting actin filament are masked by a protein. The active sites for myosin on resting actin filament are masked by a protein that is troponin. Now, myosin head contains ATPase and has ATP binding sites and active sites for actin. So, myosin head contains ATPase and has ATP binding site and active sites for actin, right? Now coming to the point, like where we are at, like so actin and myosin are polymerized proteins with contractility, right? So these are the polymerized protein, these are the contractile protein. The active sites for myosin on resting actin filament are sites and active sites for actin. Now myosin head contains ATP. Wow. The active sites for myosin, okay, myosin head contains ATPs and has ATP binding sites and active sites for them. Okay, this is done. Okay, now a motor neuron carries signal to the muscle fiber which generates an action potential in it. Now when the motor signal passes from CNS to the muscle fiber, which generates an action potential in it, into the muscle fiber. Now this causes the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, now calcium activates actin which binds to the myosin head to from a cross bridge. Now calcium activates the actin. When the calcium binds to the troponin, that is the subunit, which activates actin which binds to the myosin. Now they activate the actin which binds to the myosin head to form a cross bridge. Now cross bridge formation. Now these cross bridges pull the actin filaments, causing them to slide over the myosin filaments and thereby causing contraction. Now calcium are then returned to sarcoplasmic reticulum which inactivate the actin. Now the calcium are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum which inactivate the actin. Now cross bridges are broken and the muscle relax. So now the cross bridges are now the cross bridges are broken and the muscle is relaxed. Now repeated stimulation of muscles. Now repeatedly stimulation of muscles like contraction, relaxation. So repeated stimulation of muscles leads to fatigue, that it gets tired of. Muscles are classified as red and white fibers primarily based on the amount of red colored myoglobin pigment in them. Bones and cartilages constitute our skeletal system. So bones and cartilages uh, constitute our skeletal system. The skeletal system is divisible into axial and appendicular. So axial and then appendicular. Skull, vertebral column, ribs and sternum. These are the vertebral columns. No, these are not vertebral columns. I think I am getting sleep now. Bones and okay, repeated stimulation. Okay, muscles are red based on the amount of red color myoglobin pigment in them. Now bones and cartilage constitute our skeletal muscle system. Bones and cartilage. Now the skeletal system is divisible into axial and appendicular. Skull, vertebral column, ribs and sternum. These constitute in axial skeleton. Limb bones and girdles form the appendicular skeleton. So limb bones. So the limb bones and girdles form the appendicular skeleton. Now three types of joints are formed between bones. Three types of joints are formed between the bones or bone and cartilage. First one is the fibrous, second one is the cartilage, and third one is the synovial. Now the synovial joint allows considerable movement and therefore play a significant role in locomotion. So synovial joint. Rest of two are just like backward and forward movement, like kind of hinge, like one directional. Not that freely like the synovial joint. Okay, now the coming to the exercise part. Draw the diagram of sarcomere of skeletal muscle showing different regions. Okay, so draw the diagram of a sarcomere of skeletal muscle showing the different regions. Okay, the sarcomere contains A band, then two half I bands, then Z line. I band is connected to the Z line, right, from both the side, and then this is all like actin filament have troponin over it. Now it requires calcium to unmask this, and then it gets attached to the myosin head, that is the active site for myosin head present on the actin, right? Now define sliding filament theory of muscle contraction. So sliding filament theory of muscle contraction is just sliding, like sarcomere get contracts and then relax, right? These are the important steps in muscle contraction. So in muscle contraction, important step in muscle contraction. So muscle contraction important step is the sarcomere, and important step is the pulling of actin filament towards the myosin, right? Okay, the next question is what write true or false. If false, change the statement also so that it is true. If false, change the statement so that it is true. Okay, now actin is present in the thin filament. Exactly, actin, it does have the thin filament. A zone of striated muscle fiber represents both thick and thin filaments. In a zone of striated muscle, a zone of striated muscle fiber represents both thick and thin filaments. So a zone, no, it only represents the thick filament, right? Human skeletal has 206 bones, right? Now human skeletal has 206 bones. There are 11 pairs of ribs in a man. So there are 206 bones in human skeleton. There are 11 pairs of ribs in man. Sternum is present on the ventral side of the body. Exactly right. Write the difference between actin and myosin. So actin has the monomeric unit, and then myosin it is a band, and actin it is a I band. Writing anisotropic and isotropic, then you can say like anisotropic, white and red muscles. Like in red muscles, mitochondria, they are higher in number, and sarcoplasmic reticulum is very low. So in case of okay, so write the difference between red and white muscles. That is amount of pigment, that is myoglobin. After that, smooth muscle, that is involuntary temporisis. After that, that is skull, that means sutures. So red muscle, that is myoglobin. What are the different types of movements exhibited by the pelvic and pectoral girdle. So pelvic and pectoral girdle, right? So what are the different types of movement exhibited by cells of human body? So what are the different types of movements exhibited by the cells of the different bodies? What are the different types of movements exhibited by the cells of a human body? So what are the different types of movements exhibited by cells of the human body? That is ciliary, then amoeboid, then ciliary, amoeboid. So this type of movement is shown like ciliary or amoeboid. Now how do you discuss how do you distinguish in between a skeletal muscle and a cardiac muscle? How do you distinguish between a skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle? So cardiac muscles, they beats like 70 to 75 time per minute, and the cardiac muscle also have right. So okay, so how do you distinguish between skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle? Cardiac muscle, they are branch, and skeletal muscle, they are not. I don't think they are branch, or even if they are branch, then remember the cardiac muscle found in the cardiac skeletal, like biceps and all that, but cardiac muscles only present in eyes. Now, heart. Name the type of joint between the following. So, atlas and axis, that is uh, atlas and axis. Atlas and axis, what? Atlas and axis. Atlas and axis. So, the following joint between the following: atlas and axis. Carpal, metacarpal of thumb. Between phalanges. Between renal bones, between public bones in the pelvic girdle. Again, there is carpal, metacarpal of thumb. That is, we know. I think you know carpal and metacarpal. That is sad. Sandal joint, and then between phalanges, carpal and metacarpal of thumb. That is between pubic bones in pelvic girdle. Now fill in the blank spaces. So all animals except a few have 7 over 27, right? The number of phalanges in each limb of tree is 40. Okay, now the thin filament of myofibril contains 2 F actins and 2 other proteins, namely actin and myosin, right? In a muscle fiber, the calcium is stored in sarcoplasmic reticulum, and calcium is stored in sarcoplasmic reticulum, and pairs of the parts of the ribs are called floating ribs, like 11 and 12th. I think these are the floating ribs. Okay, the human calcium is made up of so this is how your chapter is done in here. locomotion and movement.